Richland County Council regular session meeting to order. First items we have is the invocation and pledge of allegiance by the Honorable Julianne Dixon.
Bow your heads as we say a word. The Lord is love, and he enfolded all the world in one embrace. With unfailing gaps, he holds every child of every race. And when human hearts are breaking on their sour iron rod, then they will find the same aching deep within the heart of God. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Next, we have the approval of the minutes, regular session, October 20th, 2015. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I meant to ask the clerk earlier on this one. On page 9 of our agenda, there is a vote in there, and it shows for and against. And the end result, it says the motion for reconsideration passed. However, when you look at the people that voted, it's 5-5. There's only 10 names there. So I don't know how we correct that.
Do you remember the vote?
When they went at the task.
Did somebody? Hold on just one second, Mr. Malinowski.
I know. That's probably yours. I already got mine.
My name is missing, and I voted for it.
That's what it is.
I just want to correct it so we can
That's,
move on.
I saw it, but, I forgot to email the clerk, but it was, my name was.
Yeah.
Mr. Malinowski, it is Ms. Dickerson, and her name is missing. We apologize for Ms. Dickerson. We'll make sure that's corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that's all.
All right. Thank you,
Please
Mr.
make sure my
Malinowski.
name get added to the record.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, that's what I was just stating. We'll make sure we correct it before it's posted.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. The motion on, any more discussion? All in favor of that motion to approve the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have the adoption of the agenda. Mr. McDonald, any changes?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Chair, entertain motion for approval. Second. Been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next, we have the report of the attorney for executive session, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman and member of council, we have 2 items for executive session. The first item is FEMA Public Assistance and Flood Control Works. That's to provide some legal advice to the council regarding those issues. And the other matter we have is a mutual aid agreement with the Richland County Sheriff's Department and other governmental entities. That completes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next, we have citizens' input for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. All right, I've got one citizen signed up to speak, Ms. Lynn Higgins. Ms. Higgins, if you come forward, if you can state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 2 minutes to speak. Okay, the buzzer will go off.
My name's Lynn Higgins. I live at 5420 Old Leesburg Road in Hopkins, South Carolina. Mother Nature spared my home. My heart goes out to anybody that lost their home or their business. But I did lose my driveway. My driveway is a 1/4 mile long. I've had contractors come out and look at it. FEMA said I'd probably need a contractor. 4 estimates from $11,000 to $6,000 to fix my driveway. I have dirt, I have my own culvert pipes, but I don't have heavy equipment to move these things around. My husband is disabled. I do have to call an ambulance for him periodically. I am a heart patient myself, so I could have to have an ambulance at any moment. But I have been calling since 2 days after the flood and was never told that there was a department to now look over people's driveways that have been severely washed out till today when somebody called me. And they said, well, people have been put on this list since it happened a month ago. So you're kind of at the end of the list. And with your driveway being so severe, you're definitely at the back of the list. And my thing is, I have been calling for a month. I've had 2 gentlemen from DOT come out and take pictures of my driveway, and they have said it's pretty ugly themselves. I was left the phone number for a young lady. Her name is Leslie McClory, I think is her last name. She works for transportation or DOT, I'm not sure. And I have called her back several times and still have not gotten an answer on where the status is of receiving any help with my driveway. But for me to found out today that this was created a month ago, right after this happened, and I have been trying desperately to get some help, and then to be told because mine is so severe, I will probably be put at the end of the list. You know, when I have medical issues in my home, Richland County officers won't come up it. I have a friend that drives an ambulance. He said, oh, we definitely ain't coming up that.
All right.
You know.
Ms. Higgins, if you can get with our Public Works Director, Mr. Ishmael Osbeck, and he'll definitely get you some answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our citizens' input. Next, we have the report of the County Administrator, Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Chairman, I have no report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Next, we'll have the report of the Clerk of Council, Ms. McDaniel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of council. What you have in your package is the proposed 2016 County Council meeting dates. You should have gotten an additional sheet with some proposed changes for your consideration. Those changes are to eliminate the January 5th, 26th meeting and just have one, which is January the 12th, beginning at 4:45. You would elect the chair, select your seating, and do your committees on that date, so you would only have one meeting in January. We're proposing to move the February 2nd meeting to February 9th, since we'll be coming back from council retreat and staff will be attending, so we ask that we give additional week to prepare for the council meeting. We've also asked for changes on the 5th and the 19th of July to just have one council meeting on July 12th and committees on the 26th, and to move the Labor Day council meeting to the 13th instead of you meeting on the 6th. And then the last proposal in November, instead of meeting the week going into Thanksgiving, that we meet on the 1st, 15th, and 17th. And I do ask for action on either accepting what's in the package or the proposed changes, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve those changes for discussion.
Second.
Got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Discussion, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we are moving these from the regular dates, would they be considered special call that we could call in, because I may be out of town on the September 13th one, and that is set based on what we were given here. So that's my question. These are not regular session ones when they move off of the dates, are they, once we change them from the dates that are in our rules of the 1st and the 3rd? And if that's the case, they're special call, we could call in. Anybody.
Can you clarify that? If we set them ahead of time, are they still?
They still wouldn't be consistent with what's currently in your rules.
So if it's not on the 1st or 3rd,
Yeah.
then they're a special call. Okay.
Okay. That's all. No, I'm fine with that as long as that's the case.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Ms. McDaniel.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDaniels. Next, we'll have the report of the chair. I've got two items, the flood relief strategic meeting. Well, the clerk will actually send out a email. We met with the administrator today just to make sure he has enough time to get the information together and prepare for the meeting. We were thinking maybe next Thursday, but we'll actually send out an email to council, to poll council, on some meeting dates for the strategic meeting. And that meeting is to discuss sort of, our recovery, our steps forward as we recover from the flood. And also get an update on assessments and where we are as it relates to the disaster we had. The next item is the Charter of Freedom Monument. If you remember, it's been a couple months ago now, we had a business owner a manufacturer owner in town that approached the county about setting up the Charters of Freedom on a location that we owned in the county. Since that time, he's worked with staff, and they've recommended that we put the Charters of Freedom on our front, the front of our building here at the county building. So it'll be on the county property. The owner or the individual who's donating all the infrastructure and building the monument came to visit, and he approves of the site as well. So if council is okay with that, if we can get an action to move forward with them constructing, and it's no cost to us other than removing the concrete. Is that all? Okay. So other than removing the concrete, there's no cost to the county. And then we're going to use staff, our current staff, to actually remove that concrete.
Mr. Chair, I move that we move forward on this item.
All right, got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. Discussion. Mr. Manning.
Mr. Chairman, I know that when this came up before, one of the discussion points was that there was seeing the importance for like children coming on buses. Will we be, I'm not saying in here where school buses or charter buses, if you go down to the State House, when they bring the children in for the State House tour, and, they'll block the whole street there across from the church for those buses, and then the children can get right off the bus on the sidewalk and go up. And I'm not saying how we've arranged for that to happen when I understood that was kind of a whole important aspect of this. And did we consider, and I guess my other question that I rose at the time was, did we look at the historic houses, because children go there and they could have picnic lunch on the grounds while they did this. So I'm just curious, where did the safety and the facilitation of school children come into this whole process?
Yep. Can you state your title, name and title?
Yes, sir. Roxanne Anchetta, Assistant County Administrator. Our folks looked at the site at the corner of Hardin and Hampton, and there's currently a bus stop right there for the Comet on Hardin Street. So it's contemplated that buses could pull up right there at that area. And there's also a right turn lane on Hampton that they could park at momentarily, unload, and then they could park in our back surface parking lot while they view the monument.
Okay, so an obvious question to me is, if the school bus pulls up and they're unloading the children, what's
About
the
the
Comet
Comet?
bus do?
Well, we could provide them with a schedule of the Comet so as to not intersect times. we can make them aware of the comment schedule for that location.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just very frustrated because, we talked about this originally, and it just seems to me like this is an ill-conceived plan if indeed the concept that was talked about earlier about particularly the importance of school children coming to see these 3 articles within there, that I strongly feel like we have not taken into consideration how, and we're hearing about one bus, but I think a lot of times, there's more than one bus when, an elementary school or whatever from Chester County comes into Columbia for that tour as to how this is going to work. So I just can't vote in favor of this at this point.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manning. Mr. Pierce.
Ms. Anchetta, did you look at alternate sites?
We did. We looked at Historic Columbia Foundation sites, and we also looked at the Judicial Center on Main Street, and it was determined that based upon site restrictions and traffic flow, access, a lot of various reasons, that Mr. Patterson and his group, as well as our support services and facilities and ground folks, with everything all considered, it was determined that this was indeed the best site.
Go ahead.
One more question. Did you look at Hamilton Owens Airport?
That was not considered, no, sir.
It's not centrally located.
I mean, that's, well, it has easy entrance and egress. I think that's the right word.
Okay.
And it's got that beautiful plaza out there. It's got the picnic tables. Mr. Eversman already does tours of the airport.
Okay, we can definitely take that back to Mr. Patterson and the nonprofit.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
research
make
that.
a motion that we defer action on making a final decision until they have an opportunity to at least evaluate that as an alternate site.
Second.
Got a motion, has been properly second. Discussion. No, I'm sorry, deferral's non-debatable. Yeah, deferral's non-debatable.
Do we get
All-
clarification before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Clarification would be, you told us why you didn't choose the courtroom site, but you didn't tell us why you didn't choose Historic Columbia sites.
I think that the cost there, the site renovations that would have to take place, and also the fact that we like to preserve the historic character of the facility itself. So I don't know that we would want to bring in something that might not be true to the actual site.
Thank you.
All right. Deferral,
For clarification also.
clarification.
Clarification, Ms. Anchetta, that parking lot in the back here that's fenced in, is it normally full?
It depends on the time of the month. If it's the end of the month, we have a lot of people who come in to pay their taxes. A lot of times I'll look out my window and there's not a lot of people. It ebbs and flows depending on the time of the month.
Well, won't these events be scheduled? If a bus was coming, they're just not gonna drive up here randomly and say we're
Miss
coming to do it.
Dickerson, this is non-debatable.
I'm just
I understand.
clarification.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to consider. They're not gonna be coming up here randomly without, some kind of plan for them to come, that you all know when they're coming so you can plan for them, right? Consider, that's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Deferral is on the table. It's been properly second. All in favor of deferral signify by raising your hand.
Dixon, Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Pierce, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning, Jeter.
All opposed?
Opposed, Rush.
That motion carries. And that concludes my report. Next, we have the open and closing of public hearing. Item 10, an ordinance amending the Richland County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 19, Parks and Recreation, so as to delete the entire chapter. That public hearing is open. No one signed up to speak. That public hearing is now closed. Next, we have approval of consent items, items 11 through 19.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd
Ms.
like to put
Dickerson.
item 12.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Mr. Malinowski.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I'd like to remove item number 18.
All right.
Move to approve the
Got a motion to approve the remaining items. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 12, Ms. Dickerson.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer this item. I had the opportunity today to speak with the developer, and I sent an email out to the administrator, I sent an email out to legal, and I sent an email out to Ms. McDaniel to let them know that this item, I had no idea of it, and it was talked about between staff and other members, and it did not come before me. I had no idea what was going on. The developer has agreed for me to defer this item until this November 17th minute.
I got a motion for deferral. It's been properly second. The deferral's non-debatable. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 18, Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to find out, make sure that I've got correct information here, that this event is called the Governor's Road Cup Race, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so how much money has been donated toward this event by the governor or the state?
None to my knowledge, Mr. Malinowski.
Okay. The race is run, based on what I was reading, completely within incorporated areas of Richland County. So how much money has been donated by any of the incorporated areas where this race is run?
Mr. Malinowski, you are correct. The race is within the city limits of Columbia. Whether the city contributes or whether
I
they,
believe that's correct, Mr. McDonald.
it's not in the city?
No, it is part in the city,
Part
but
of
they
the
do
city.
run through portions of
The county.
unincorporated.
They do.
I can't.
They do?
Yes.
I was just reading what it said here about Forest Acres and USC and the city, and just on the info I had.
The city's in the county.
Nonetheless, I'd still like to know what donations are given toward it by any municipalities.
Mr. Malinowski, the city does provide.
Brandon, if you state your name and title, please.
Brandon Madden, Research Manager. The City of Columbia does provide funding, but the other unincorporated areas, I do not believe they provided funding for their race this year.
Because I did not see the, and maybe I overlooked it, I didn't see it in the applications where it stated other amounts being contributed as income sources. I did not see the city mentioned in there. But even with that, if you will turn to, I think it's page 63 of our agenda, it says in there that the total income projected for fiscal year 16 is $122,085. The total expenses are $59,700, therefore net proceeds of $62,385. So if they're netting over $62,000, I don't understand why we're giving them $5,000 more. Even if you take our $5,000 out, they're still netting $57,000. So based on those figures, that shows they are self-supporting from all the other income. I would make a secondary motion that we deny this request.
I second that. I got a motion. It's been properly second. Discussion. Mr. Jeter.
Yeah, just real quick. I think some of those proceeds that are left over, the net proceeds, are used to promote healthy lifestyles throughout the region. I think it's noted in the application somewhere.
It is on page 65 at the bottom.
Yeah, we're running programs, physical activity, opportunities for youth and health and fitness activities. So, I mean, I don't think the money just,
It's not a profit.
just sitting there. I think they,
The only thing that it shows, Mr. Jeter, at the bottom of page 65 for contributions to health organizations totals $3,500. and 500 of it is the AC Flora ROTC, and I don't have a problem with that, but what about the other ROTCs then? Why is it to the exclusion of the others?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
You still have the floor, Mr. Chair.
if you had any other organizations that you may want to recommend, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to entertain suggestions from you or any other members of council. But my point is that the money, I think, is being used to support or promote other activities. I'm finished, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jeter. Mr. Manning.
I know oftentimes, like for corporate sponsors, it includes some complimentary registrations. Has that been addressed for this level of money, whether any council member that might want to run in that half marathon might have a complimentary registration for it? Or one of their direct nuclear family relatives? I know.
Chairman, staff has not asked that question of the Governor's Cup organization. We can, but we haven't done it to this point.
Colleagues, I'd like for that to be asked. I know two people that either have themselves or a child that might like to have one of those complimentary registrations.
I sure could.
Or a resident in Richmond.
Yeah, sure. And she's a resident of Richmond County.
So you're going to answer that question?
Yeah, we can definitely ask Governor's Cup.
Thank you.
I challenge everybody to train up and run for it.
I'm
There's plenty of time.
I'm gonna be running into this guy.
And all I'm asking is that if we would look at if a private corporation sponsored the race at $7,000, would they have any? And if they do, then I think we ought to get the equivalent. I'm not asking for something uniquely or especially different for us. I'm just saying if there are level sponsorships that do that, then I think that ought to be considered as well. Well, we might need a legal opinion on it. I don't know, people calling the lawyer.
Yeah, we need
Now I'm
legal
real
to.
nervous.
Can you speak to this for a second, Mr. Smith? Basically, by giving this sponsorship or funding this motion, being able to get complimentary registration, is that something? I got you. All right. Or if you want to state it differently, Mr.
I
Miller.
would state, because I want to be very clear. If a private organization were to sponsor this race at a $7,000 level, if that would include for them any complimentary registrations, is it not right, fair, and/or proper for us to ask for the equivalent if there were anybody from this body or this organization that might want to use those?
Can you speak to that? Can you speak to that, Mr. Smith?
Obviously, that would probably invoke some issues under the Ethics Act, because that would also get into what the value of that particular ticket or whatever it is that the council member is going to get is going to be. So it may require some reporting requirements, or it could invoke some other provisions of the act. So without knowing all of the specifics of that, it's sort of difficult to answer that right now. But you would have to determine, for one, what the value of that would be in terms of what the council member would actually be getting. And then that could potentially be a requirement, at least a reporting requirement that you may have to engage in.
All right, then, can I make a second subsidiary motion?
You still have the floor, Mr. Manning.
I move that we approve the amount of $7,000 minus the value of whatever a corporate sponsor would get for $7,000.
Only for life.
I don't think I understand that motion.
Mr. Chair,
Well,
for clarification
Well,
on this motion.
one second, Mr. Dickerson. Mr. Marion, can you clarify that motion again?
the attorney said that the concern would be figuring out the value of that. So what I'm saying is, if you can figure out the value to that, which would make that unethical for us as a governing body, then you could figure out that same value. You know, like I go down to run these things, and people from the state newspaper who are sponsors, they're all down there running for free with complimentary tickets. So if you can figure out that value, if we could just go ahead and subtract it from the $7,000, and then that would be the amount we write the check for.
Clarification, Mr. Chair.
Clarification. And I got some people signed up. to speak.
5,000 was a committee recommendation.
That's what I was trying to
Okay.
get to. That
All
was
right.
the point.
Okay, that's the motion that's on the table.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chair.
No, I just put it up. That's the motion that's on the table.
What motion?
The one that Mr. Manning just made.
Yeah.
Oh, that
And
was
it,
second.
and it dies for lack of second. So the motion on the table right now is for approval, $5,000. Okay.
No.
No. There was an original motion.
Committee's recommendation.
The committee recommendation was for $5,000, all right. Ms. Dickerson, I have Ms. Dickerson first.
That's basically what I wanted to say. The committee, this came out of committee with a recommendation of $5,000, not $7,000. And that should probably help with all of the $2,000 or $3,000 that's different. So that's what came out of committee, and that's what we said that we would do. And this is not a governor's event. This is the organization that's calling this the Governor's Cup. It's not sponsored by, or is it the governor's function? So it's just called the Governor's Cup for South Carolina.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Mr. Rose.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, there's a big difference between a private entity sponsoring out of their proceeds and a public body spending taxpayer money. So I don't think that would be appropriate to ask. I think we should sponsor this at the recommended amount of $5,000. I think last year we gave $7,000, but I'm okay with the committee's, what the committee recommended, because I think it's a good, very good event, and it attracts a lot of people and brings in hospitality tax dollars to Richland County and the city.
All right.
Clarification before we vote.
No, I've got some more people to sign up to speak.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, in addition to them making a bunch of money already, if you look at the H-tax and the A-tax applications, there's a discrepancy on the expense category and a discrepancy on the income category. So I don't know that we can count on any of these figures that are here. I think they need to go back to the drawing board and start over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeter.
Just real quick, I know customarily, we've tried our best when we support funding for events like this, that we do, if given the legal authority, we do try to make sure that residents that can't afford the registration fee, if the organization could waive some of those fees, I don't think that's unethical. Maybe not pointed directly toward the county council, but, you know, if there's a sponsorship level and there are entry fees that sponsors are being given, I think if we move forward and approve this, that we ask that organization, if Richland County funds it, whatever level that is for sponsorship or entry fees, that our residents can apply for those. So that's just something we can think about.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Jeter.
Point of clarification. Are
All right.
you amending the motion?
Well, I'll amend the motion to, if that's possible, to allow for county residents, if they would have registration fees waived, if possible, that they'd be able to do that.
Is that a secondary motion, or you want to make a friendly amendment? Well, will the maker of the motion?
Well, actually, the motion came from a committee, so it would have to be.
I made a secondary one for denial.
Y'all understand what I'm saying? I mean, we've had organizations that we funded and we told them, hey, we want you to go out, like our arts community. We want you to go out into the unincorporated areas and provide art training for residents. We've given many times to the organization and asked them to at least, provide that type of service in the unincorporated areas. So I guess it's a secondary motion.
I'll second your motion.
Okay.
Yeah, sponsor something.
And that's been properly second. Mr. Livingston. Discussion, Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to speak to the motion Mr. Manning made, but since that's no longer a motion, I
All right.
have nothing else to add.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is we're getting into telling the organization what they should do. They send an application in, they tell you their intent. It's described in the application, right? Either we'll fund it or not, but to get into detailing how the applicant should spend their money and who they should give and who they should not give, or how to do it, I think we're going too far and getting in depth. All applicants and all grants requests, they state their purpose, what they would like to do. We said yes and grace them with a grant, or we said no. I think we keep it simple. If we start getting in details now, in the future, all the grants coming in, we're going to start telling them what we think they should do. I think they have space already available for people who can't afford to participate, and they'll give them a grant or grant them free registration.
Mr. Chairman, point of personal privilege.
Yep.
Thank you.
I apologize for opening my mouth on this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. The motion on the, Mr. Jeter, can you clarify your motion again?
And pretty much, I move that we approve the, I don't know if it's sponsorship level, but the request for $5,000. And we ask that if there's a sponsorship level that would offer registration fees as part of the funding, that we allow our residents to be part of that, pretty much.
All right, that's the motion on the table. It's been properly second. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Shall we vote on the motion as amendment or just amendment?
The amendment, I'm sorry, the substitute, that substitute motion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Pierce, Jeter.
All opposed?
Opposed, Dixon, Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Rush, Dickerson, Manning.
All right, that motion fails. The original motion is for denial. That was Mr. Malinowski's motion. All in favor of that? Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
That's the original motion?
That was the original motion.
No, it's substitute.
Hold on.
Original motion.
I'm sorry. All
was the committee
right, the
recommendation.
substitute, not the second substitute. All right, so the substitute motion was for denial.
Yeah, so
The substitute motion was for denial. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Malinowski, Jackson, Rush, Jeter.
All opposed?
Opposed, Dixon. Rose, Pierce, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning.
All right, that motion fails. The original motion is for $5,000. All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Rose, Pierce, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning.
All opposed?
Opposed, Malinowski, Jackson, Rush, Jeter.
All right, that motion.
Mr. Chair,
That motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider this item, please.
I got a motion for reconsideration. It's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion failed. Item 20, second reading items. Item 20A is authorizing the expansion of the boundaries of the I-77 Corridor Regional Industrial Park jointly developed with Fairfield County to include certain additional real property located in Richland County. The execution and delivery of a First Amendment to that certain credit agreement between Richland County and CD/Park 7, Columbia, South Carolina, High Rise Owner LLC to include such additional property as part of the project site described therein, and other related matters. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion for approval. It's been properly second. All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon. Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning, Jeter.
Any opposed? Like sign. That motion carries. Next, we have the report of the Administration and Finance Committee. Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 21, creation of 3 new CASA caseworker positions. The committee recommended that the council refer this item to the county's FY17 budgetary process. That was a motion from the committee.
Okay, you heard the committee's motion?
That was my committee's motion, but I'd like to make a different motion.
Okay, you heard the committee's motion. Discussion. Mr. Pierce.
There is a considerable question about the need for these positions, and regrettably, because of other activity, Mr. Harley has some information and that is inconsistent, some inconsistencies with the need here. If we could possibly defer this one meeting so we could get accurate information. If what I'm hearing is true, then it may be in our interest to go ahead and move on this item now rather than put this off until January. But if we could have one additional meeting to fully investigate this, it would really, I believe, be in the best interest of the children that we're serving.
All right, motion is deferral. It's been properly second. Deferral is non-debatable. All in favor of deferral signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Pierce.
Chairman. Second item is a ordinance amending the fiscal year 2015 hospitality tax fund annual budget to appropriate $75,000 hospitality fund balance to provide funding for famously hot New Year. This item, the original motion was for $89,000. The committee did vote. It was not unanimous to fund it at $75,000. The money to come out of the fund balance that has been set aside for the special, encumbered for special projects. But the motion from the committee was to approve at $75,000.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Discussion. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, when we're dealing with finances, I think that the figures need to be 100% accurate. And here we see differences in the expenses and income categories on 2 applications, A-tax and H-tax, for the exact same event. I think until such discrepancies are resolved, we shouldn't be providing money to groups that can't get us correct figures. So I would move to defer this until we can get accurate figures.
I got a motion for deferral. I'll second that. It's been properly second. Deferral is non-debatable. All in favor of deferral signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Malinowski, Pierce, Rush.
All opposed?
O's, Dixon, Rose, Jackson, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning, Jeter.
That motion fails. What was the original? What was the committee's?
$75,000.
Okay.
That was the original.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Mr. Pierce.
I voted against this in the committee, and the question is not the project that we are voting for. We had an opportunity to fund this project during our budget cycle. The council voted not to fund the project. You funded it at $11,000. Now, I don't know what changed between that and now, but now we're going to go into a reserve fund that's being held for different projects to fund this at the original, well, not at the full original amount, but we're giving them $75,000 more. The project, I mean, what the money is going for is worthwhile, but it should have been done as part of the project, and we should not be going into reserve to be doing this. So I can't support this based on where the money is coming from at this time. So thank you.
Any more discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor.
The motion is for
Motion is for
approval.
$75,000.
Yep.
In favor, Dixon, Jackson, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning, Jeter.
All opposed?
Oppose, Malinowski, Rose, Pierce, Rush.
That motion carries. Mr. Pierce. Mr. Pierce.
That concludes my report, Mr.
It's a first reading item, Ms.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Next, we'll have report of the Economic Development Committee. Mr. Livingston.
Mr. Chair, item 23A is an ordinance to amend the agreement for designation of the I-77 Corridor Regional Industrial Park, April 15, 2003, by and between Fairfield County and Richland County / to enlarge the park, reference Stevens Bruce Incorporated, and this is for first reading. What this will allow Stevens Bruce to do is just simply to be able to take advantage of the state tax credit. Doesn't cost the county any particular thing. So if they get any new jobs and so forth, they can get the state tax credits, and hopefully that would encourage them to even get more jobs. And so the committee's recommendation is for approval for first reading.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation for approval. Discussion. All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Livingston.
Item 23B, authorize the execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of tax agreement by and between Richland County and Project OR, whereby Richland County will enter into a fee in lieu agreement arrangement with Project OR, and providing for payment by Project OR in certain fee in lieu of declaring taxes, providing the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement established for the multi-county industrial park. And it's recommended, we're asking for first reading only. So this will come back for council because we want to keep the process going with this particular potential project. The Economic Development Office is negotiating with Project OR, and hopefully there's a potential for this project to locate in Richland County. But in order to keep this going, we need to move forward first reading only. So the process can continue. The detail will be provided prior to second reading. Committee's recommendations for approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation for approval. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
Chair, that
Mr.
completes the report of the Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Next, we have the report of the Rules and Appointment Committee. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 24, the committee recommends to re-advertise for that vacancy.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Item number 25, the committee recommends to appoint Catherine Shemel Cook to the East Richland Public Service Commission.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Manning.
I'm sorry.
As a point of clarification on this particular commission, aren't we technically moving to have her recommended to be appointed at the governor's office?
Correct.
We don't actually directly appoint.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Mr. Livingston.
I'm good.
All right, the committee's recommendation is for approval. All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 26, Building Codes Board of Appeals, 3 vacancies. After interviews, the committee recommends to reappoint the 3 applicants, Mr. Michael Lohman, Greg Mackey, and Jesse S. Burke.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor of that recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 27, notification of vacancies. The committee recommends to advertise the vacancies listed as A, B, C, D, and E.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
The Airport Commission, those slots, certain slots are for certain specifications. So we need to advertise
Yeah, the clerks put that out during the ad. Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pierce. The committee recommendation is to re-advertise those?
Advertise.
Or advertise those, all right. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 28, the committee recommends to adopt the language on page 153 of our agenda regarding how council members will be able to participate in boards, committees that are appointed, that receive funds from Richland County.
What was your?
You want me to read the whole thing here?
No, what was your recommendation?
The recommendation is to approve the language that exists on page 153 of our agenda. That language is, all Richland County Council members appointed by the council chair as liaisons to any board, commission, committee, agency, entity, or public body, hereafter public bodies, 1, created by an ordinance of Richland County, or 2, funded by Richland County, or 3, whose members are appointed by the governing body of Richland County, shall be permitted to attend all meetings of such public bodies, including any executive sessions held by such public bodies.
Okay, you heard the committee's recommendation. Discussion. Mr. Pierce.
Is this a one reading item? Yes. Okay, there, all right, well, I have to bring it up now then, I guess. All right, there is one exception to this. All right, there is one agency which we appoint their members, and but the money passes, it doesn't really come from, it just passes through our budget.
And we're not actually putting.
So technically, we're not funding them.
Right.
No.
We are but it's the right act.
Yeah.
But we appoint the member, we appoint,
All right,
Did the
we
wording not
appoint committee
say?
members, don't
just looking for clarification.
Yeah,
Would
Mr.
this
Chairman,
cover that,
we?
Mr.
I got you down, Mr. Manning.
Mr. Smith?
This is one that Brad worked on, but I think it would cover it in the sense that while the council doesn't directly fund it, you do appoint its members, which I think are one of the three things that must
To confuse things a little bit even more, I mean, we have provided capital money for them in the past, so technically we have funded them in the past, but.
Okay, but even without the funding question, I think it provides for this particular rule to apply if we appoint the members.
And we do.
And we do.
We do appoint the members, so
Right.
that would, okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pierce.
I'm good.
Mr. Manning.
If it's good, then I don't need to clarify.
All right, Mr. Livingston.
There may be, there's some boards and commissions that we appoint as well as, maybe the City of Columbia, Lexington County, all of us appoint persons to the same board.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's going to run into a conflict if those members from those other boards aren't allowed to attend those executive sessions, but they just have to decide for themselves, I guess. But we'll just have to see what kind of conflict it creates for us. But we can have a lot of that, whether it's Central Midlands, whether it's the conventions, all of those different boards.
All right.
So we need to decide how we deal with that when it comes about.
You done, Mr. Livingston?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Malinowski, then Mr. Dickerson.
All right, I would just add that was mentioned to our legal staff, that there were some committees that were jointly appointed by different entities, and with that information, this is the language they came back with. So will that cover it?
Office. Yes, here's the situation on that. The ordinance or the rule actually is drawn in such a way as to cover every possible nexus that the county has with the board. So, for example, if you appoint, if you fund, or if you created it, and it's an expression of your intent. Now, in practice, what happens is if you get shut out from these meetings, then that's something where you need to huddle and say, we've got this entity that's not allowing us to come into executive sessions. What are we going to do about it? And so I think and I think you've got some things that you can do, and rather than kind of go into what those particular tools might be, I think that's just kind of the operationally how it would play out. But if, you got a law, and if somebody doesn't let you come in pursuant to that law, then you got to decide what you're going to do at that point in terms of response.
That's my point. We'll take it as come again.
Yep.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any more discussion? All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Malinowski, Jackson, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning, Jeter.
All opposed, like sign. That motion carries. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 29 was held in committee for further explanation of some of the terminology that was provided to us, as well as clarification of other language. And that concludes the report of the Rules and Appointments Committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Malinowski.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Dickerson.
I'd like to have a point of personal privilege, please.
Yes, Ms. Dickerson.
Our former council member, Miss Bernice Scott, is sitting in the audience. She tried to sneak in, but I saw her. So she's sitting in the audience in the back there, and I'm gonna point her out. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Other items, item 30A, a resolution to appoint and commission. Mr. Manning.
Chairman, I move for items 30A and B to approve.
Second.
All right. We got a motion. It's been properly second. All in favor of that motion signify by raising your hand.
In favor, Dixon, Malinowski, Rose, Jackson, Pierce, Rush, Livingston, Dickerson, Manning.
Any opposed? Like sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Next, we have citizens' input. Must pertain to items not on the agenda. We have 3 citizens signed up to speak. First, we have Ms. Helen Taylor. We have 4 citizens signed up to speak. First, we have Ms. Helen Taylor Bradley. If you can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 2 minutes to speak. And after that, we'll have Ms. Tanya Rodriguez Hodges.
Good evening. I'm Helen Taylor Bradley. I reside at 1916 Martin Luther King Boulevard, Hopkins, South Carolina. Tonight, I'm coming to just give a few remarks on the Lower Richland Operations Center. We do have a lot of citizens in Lower Richland that was misplaced during the disaster. And yes, they do need help. But I don't feel like they should have to wait for their help while we create salaries for people to go out and find them when we know where they are. We need people that's willing to volunteer, because that's what helping people is all about. And when I say volunteer, I mean freely volunteer. I don't think we need to create an operation to pay a lot of people to do nothing. I think it's appalling and disgusting that a person would try to create salaries to pay people to go out and find people that's in need, that we know where they are and we know what their needs are. If we have monies at the county that should be allocated to help people, I think it should do just that. It should be given to the citizens who need it. If they're out of their homes, help them get back in their homes. Give the money to the citizens and not let anyone else capitalize on another person's misfortune. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Ms. Hodges. Yep.
Good evening. This is overdue, but we had a pre-flood life and a post-flood life. So with that said, we are here.
Ms. Hodges, I'm sorry, if you can state your name and address for the record, please.
Tanya Rodriguez Hodges, and we're on the northeast of Columbia, 9400 Two Notch Road, with Latino Communications. So we are here just officially to say thank you to County Council for your unwavering support year after year. This year, as you well know, we were funded for Sofrito and Soul Music Festival, which was the inaugural year on the northeast of Columbia at 900 Clemson Road. For a first-time event, we are happy and proud to say that we had nearly 4,000 participants that day, well over 200 children, and we were able to clock this by the help of Richland County Sheriff's Department, but also because of some of the items that we had and things that folks signed up for. But the children themselves were able to create Mexican folklore masks, and we literally ran out of supplies, which were for 180 children, and we had to run back out to Target and spend a little bit more money to supply the remaining kids that were there. It was a great, fun day. It was the first time that jazz, blues jazz and Latin jazz fused together, and we had Dante Lewis along with the Palmetto Latin Band that was there with us that day, and it was a really fun day. Hot as all get out, but it was a really fun day. So with that, we also brought a cake as a thank you from our organization to county council members to once again say thank you, not only for that, but for all of the support that you have given to the Hispanic community throughout this time, especially now throughout the funding, especially to Councilwoman Dixon and the families that are in the mobile home parks in her area.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Next, we have Mr. Arthur Seawright, and then we'll have Ms. Bernice Scott. Mr. Seawright, if you could state your name and address for the record, you have up to 2 minutes to speak.
That's what I say.
I'll run it off at the governor's court.
My name is Arthur Seawright. I live at 2976 South Partridge Circle, Hopkins, South Carolina. Maybe a little out of order because I signed up on the wrong sheet.
That's fine,
Now,
sir.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, what happened I'm in the Lower Richland community. The subdivision is Quail Creek. And part of my backyard was washed away by the flood because part of my backyard is located by the by the drainage ditch. And so part of my backyard is washed away, and they had a 8-foot cavity there, but they came in and they rebuilt that portion of it. But at the same token, the part of the land that was eroded belonged to the county. So now that back portion of my yard embankment is compromised. It needs something to be done to make sure it's stable because it started raining this week and the erosion started again. Also, because of the collapse of the embankment that's owned by Richland County, I have 2 sheds that's no longer there. They were on foundation, but because of the flood, they're about a quarter of a mile, half a mile down, stuck in some trees. And the other part is that in the Quail Creek subdivision, we have one way in and one way out. And during the flood, they closed the road. So therefore, we could not get out of the community. The community has something like over 100 families in that community. Now, recently, they repaired the road, but we still had the same problem. One way in, one way out. So I think we need to come up, where the council need to come up with some alternate exit and entrance into the community, because if this problem happens again, then you're gonna have over 100 families stuck in the same area with no way to go to work, no way to go to school, no way to go anywhere. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Seawright. You can actually get with our Public Works Department to speak about the issue you have. Next, we have Ms. Bernice Scott. If you can come forward, Ms. Scott, and state your name and address for the record. You have up to 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernice G. Scott, 328 Willow Wind Road, Hopkins, 29061. I'm a little disappointed in some of the council members because 48 is cut off. People still have to run around the roads. 48 is cut off. The main roads in the area is cut off. And no one has done anything about it. I thought the county would look at the gentleman who came down to help us. He had everything organized and people going out doing what they're supposed to do. I have a folder here. I'm not just talking about what somebody should do. I'm talking about what I did personally, and I will continue to do it. But we have a lot of people here who did a lot of volunteer. Would y'all raise your hand, the volunteers? Who volunteer to make sure that the people we know, because I worked that area for 20 years, I lived in it all my life. I know all the sick people. I know where they are. I've been to their home. I got a folder here with people name in it, just some of them that I know. It's about keeping somebody whole. We ain't talking about just goodies coming out. And we appreciate everything that the people send from New Jersey and everywhere. But we got a problem in the Lower Richland area. And every time we turn around, we have to beg for anything that come about. The thing is that when you got somebody you could have negotiated with, it ain't about me. I don't want any money from the county. I've been blessed. I thank God for that. And I'm blessing a lot of people I know. But the thing is, we need people down there to help organize where the people are. I can't go in Greg's community and find out where everybody is because I don't know it that well. Greg can't come in my community and find out where the people are. I've been to those people's houses. And we need to negotiate their contract so that we can have some things to do and doing it well. Now you don't know what is. People call me all day about things, and I don't know. I know the shop road's still open. I know we got to do other things. But now I'm telling y'all, do not cut Lower Richland off from the Richland County. We are a part of the county. We are doing good, but we need some help. We need some help in that area, and I thought by putting Kevin and Norman put the general there that help us to move around, and he's been moving us around. I thought that was wonderful. I mean, so please negotiate that contract with him and see what can be done so that we can continue. Some of these people be here talking, I haven't seen them out there in the bushes. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
I thank y'all, but I really, Richland County, Lower Richland is a part of Richland County.
Yes, ma'am.
And if anybody want us to come and help you in another area, we'd be glad to do that too. I'm all about help.
All right.
When you
Thank
do good by God, people, God do good by you.
Thank you. That concludes citizens' input. Next, we have executive session. Mr. Smith, can you state the two items for executive session,
Yes, Mr.
please?
Chairman and members of council, we have FEMA Public Assistance and Flood Control Works, that's legal advice, and a mutual aid agreement with the Sheriff's Department. It's a routine matter, but we'll bring it forward. Those are two items.
Okay. We got a motion, it's been properly second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Anybody said aye?
Yeah, we said.
All right. Any opposed? We're in executive session.